Yeah, I think the most important thing I discovered was that you can be from the same parents and the same environment, and you're having two different realities, especially if one of them is wired differently than how you're wired, which we really technically all are wired differently, but especially if you have someone with ADHD and someone without, the experience, the perceptions, in real time are different.
ADHD Rewired, episode number 38. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. Whether you have ADHD and want to learn more about it, or you are looking for ways to organize your time, your things, or the many details of life so you can get more done, this show is for you. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. But first...
Audible. What? You haven't got your free download yet? Come on. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free audiobook download. audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired.
ADHD Rewired community, I just want to remind you that if you go to erictivers.com/coaching rewired, again, that's erictivers.com/coaching rewired, you can let me know if you are interested in the upcoming online coaching group that will be starting just after the new year. When I have more information about it, I will certainly let you know. But I made my first announcement about this on last week's episode, and I've already received a number of people letting me know that they are interested. So I'm really excited, but until then, I have to finish and focus on this current group that is in the last few weeks. So if you're interested, go to my website, erictivers.com/coaching rewired. Again, that's erictivers.com/coaching rewired. And now, the interview. Hello, I am thrilled to be welcoming my guest, Jenny Friedman. And instead of me giving a long introduction about who she is, I'm going to say this. She's about to come out with a book, and she forwarded me the foreword to her book. And after I read it, my first thought was, this is how I want her to introduce herself. I want her to read the foreword. So, Jenny, welcome to ADHD Rewired.
Thanks, Eric.
So, your book is called?
See an ADHD and get clear on what's going on.
Awesome. Okay. And I'm not going to set it up anymore. Just why don't you go ahead and read that forward for us?
Sure. Since finishing my degree in psychology and beginning a career in ADHD coaching, I've been looking back on my life with much more clarity. I now see the effects of the invisible conditions that haunted my family: bipolar disorder, ADHD, schizophrenia, depression, and anxiety. We had looked, by all accounts, like a typical, quote, normal family of four, complete with a cat, but I never did feel normal. In fact, quite the opposite. I always felt different from them and from my friends. Being neurotypical in a home full of ADHD isn't easy. I guess many of the ideas I've held about my family were misperceptions because I was coping with a lot of dysfunction. But these ideas were based off of living with legitimate symptoms of everyone's invisible conditions. My father had ADHD and bipolar disorder and suffered from chronic depression, leading to his eventual suicide. My mother had crippling rheumatoid arthritis, which over decades made her grouchy and irritable, sadly forcing her to live out her years as a bedridden invalid with dementia. And then there is my sister. She has ADHD and chronic anxiety. A few years ago, my sister shared stories of her childhood anxiety and panic attacks, all of which I had no idea. Our parents never discussed it with me. It was 2010, and my sister was telling me that she had just been diagnosed with ADHD. While learning what that is and how it affects her, I had an epiphany. we are all wired differently. One's biology explains a lot of their behaviors, as well as the reactions to those behaviors from those who love them most. By beginning to understand her, I also learned a lot about me. It was the beginning of a crazy journey where I discovered how to see her in a new, better way. I learned how to see in ADHD. I want to share my story because I've learned a lot, experienced a lot, and no, I'm not alone. I want others to know that we're in this together. Oftentimes, so much emphasis is placed on the person with ADHD and how to manage it, that for the others involved, those who live with and love them, well, we're pretty much left to figure out things on our own. For us, it's kind of like, what the blank is going on as we continue to not understand why the person with ADHD is still doing what they're doing, even after a diagnosis or medication. There is no rule book written on how to engage effectively in a way that is positive and nurturing for our relationships. There's also a lot of mixed information out there to sort through, specifically on ADHD. Some is great, new, valid discoveries, but a lot of bad, either outdated or just made up information gets mixed in. This is the type that seems to be churned out for public consumption, only to make a few scam artists a buck. For Joe Public, it can be frustrating to know which is which. To make matters more confusing, even the accurate information is often wrapped in neuroscientific jargon, making it difficult for simply anyone and everyone to grasp. So I'm sharing what I've learned, both formally and through personal experience, translating it all into easy-to-understand language and offering real-life examples. Hopefully, everyone will learn to see an ADHD as I have, so that collectively we can make all the judgments and prejudice against those with it finally disappear.
Well, thank you so much for reading that. How was that for you reading that?
I got a little choked up.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
It was about when you were reading, I think about your parents that they really kind of got you choked up.
Yeah.
So most of the guests on our show thus far, I think with the exception of Ari Tuckman and John Lee Dumas, have had ADHD. Now, I think one way to also look at having ADHD is being a family member who's living with ADHD, because you have it, just you carry it differently.
Yeah.
So, one, thank you for coming on the show and for sharing that forward with us. I thought it was just very beautifully written. And I really understand now when I first was talking to you earlier last week about, explain to me the whole title of seeing an ADHD. When you finished that line of I learned to see in ADHD, it's like, now I get it.
I thought that would make more sense for you because, it's not some gimmicky thing like, seeing ADHD glasses,
Is there something like, Google glasses with
right.
the shinier?
Right.
So, Jenny, tell us a little bit about what that, take us to that moment that you shared with me about when you were having an argument with your sister, and then she kind of explained to you kind of what's really going on with her. And when she explained that ADHD to you, can you just kind of take us there?
Yeah, we were going through. She and I were not close. Growing up I was the older one, and so I just wanted to be left alone by my little sister, and so we weren't close then. And then when I got old enough to leave the house, I ran off as far as I could, as fast as I could. My dad had committed suicide, and I just bolted. So we just weren't really close. And then. And
how old were you then?
I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, fast forward, I'm 43, I think. I'm like, wait a minute.
I get so relate to that. After 21, I'm like, wait, how old am I?
Yeah. So 20 years later, I saw her, sometimes around the holidays, but we were just not close. Mm-hmm. And now my mother's passing away, and we're having to be together in a way that we hadn't been. And every time that happened, she would go through these sort of bringing up what a bad sister I was when we were kids, but it was every time. And it was really annoying for me to have to, at first it wasn't annoying. At first I really had to work through it and then apologize and own up to my, stuff and make good with her. And I thought we had done that. And then here we were again, going through it again. And I know everyone's emotions are high because my mom was dying, but, we literally went through this argument where she was talking about, what I did to her when we were kids. And I was apologizing in a really profound way for me because I was apologizing as my childhood self was like my inner child was apologizing to her inner child. And I was trying to get, really get to her. And we did. We had a really close moment. It was wonderful. And I swear, I changed the subject though, because we had to get to business about my mom. And then 5 minutes had passed maybe. And she suddenly said something real snappy and mean, like as if we hadn't just had that whole deep, poignant conversation. I was like, did we not just go through this? Like, what planet are you on? And she looked at me and she goes, oh, yeah, we did. I'm sorry. You know what? That must be my ADHD. And I was like, what is that? And I had heard of it at that point, but I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, it turns out I have a processing disorder. And so when things are said to me, sometimes I don't take them in exactly. And I was like, oh. And so she really didn't understand much more than that at the time, but that was enough I had already had, with my daughter, we thought that she had a learning disability at one point. So she had been tested and then we had realized from another doctor saying, she's just wired differently. She's doesn't have a learning disorder. But she's slow at processing. So when my sister said she has this processing disorder, I just, all of a sudden I went, oh, you know what? We're all wired differently. So I already know that we're wired differently. So you're wired differently. And that sort of explains why I always feel like I'm pounding my head against a brick wall when I talk to you. I mean, not always, but a lot of times. Mm-hmm. So that was the beginning of a wow, like aha moment for me.
So, let me ask you this, because I think this is just in sibling relationships for adult siblings, that I think it's very common for us to we fall back into these roles that we were when we were kids as soon as we are with our families. And it's through understanding and learning about family systems, this is a very kind of common thing that occurs in families. It's like when I go for family things to my older sisters, I'm the annoying little brother, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I'm the mean sister. I can never get past being the mean older sister. It's like, come on, I'm really nice now.
And I think there's one part of it that when that, okay, so this is sort of a kind of, normally experienced family dynamic thing that happens, that it takes some of the, why does this always happen? It's like, well, it's just kind of how relationships tend to work. But it takes some work to move beyond that. And it takes, a lot of communication about that. And it's not always easy, especially when there's any kind of mental illness, ADHD, any different wiring, in the family.
Yeah.
And we know how heritable ADHD is. So if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking about, oh, that's how it is with my family too, know that you're probably not the only one that's got a little bit of some different wiring, going on. It's, and the repeating, it's funny because my mom, has a history of repeating herself, quite often. And what's so funny is that my wife has recently pointed out that I sometimes do that too. And I'm like, oh no.
Yes. And I do that too. My husband has pointed out, he's like, you've already told me that. And I do think growing up in my house that even when I went to school with all these people had ADHD except for me in the class.
Of course.
And so, and I'm not thinking really anything of it. Occasionally something would happen and they would all laugh at me like, oh, how, bland of you or how, neurotypical of you. But for the most part, a lot of them were absolutely convinced I had it myself, and to the point where I was like, maybe I do have it myself, but I don't. But I do think there's some characteristics that you adopt from just the people that you're around, and environmentally, there's also just some bleed over, into it's.
Sure, but traits are not diagnostic. You can share traits with things.
Yes.
But if you look through the diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders, the thing where everything is from anxiety disorders to ADHD to autism to schizophrenia, all of these things, we could probably pick any random, thing throughout that entire book and find at least one trait that we can all identify with.
Absolutely. They're human traits.
Right, exactly. It's when you pair all these together, and so you have a certain amount of them, and they're going on for a certain amount of time, and often, one of the criteria is that it's in a certain amount of environment, so it's not just in one particular environment.
Right.
Age of onset is often a diagnostic marker, so it's not just this one. It's like, oh, I'm always looking for my keys. Like, that might just mean you need a better place to put your keys. It doesn't mean you have ADHD.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
But it's like when you...
And that's how I figured out, no, I don't have it. But I see how, there's some characteristics and why people get confused. But I think it's important what you just explained to understand, no, there is more of a diagnostic criteria here, and it has to do with time and a lot of other factors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I do think too, and I think I've mentioned this before and maybe in passing on a prior episode, that I think that there's a lot to be said for, because I think I hear a lot of people kind of in passing joke about this, that, I don't have ADHD, but now that my kids do, my husband does, or, whatever, I feel like I do. And, I hear so many people say that, and my brain sees patterns. That's kind of the way my brain works. And I really think, when we think about how are we as social animals, that we adapt to our environment and we tend to imitate without even realizing it. So is there a kind of a social contingent theory going on that, is actually changing how our brain functions based upon the people that we are around? And I think that there needs to be more research about this. Are there things that can be diagnostic to ADHD, but that aren't, actually ADHD? Yes, but I think we need other names for that, because I think that ADHD is a developmental disorder. So it's something that is, whether or not it's really seen or noticed, really early on, the diagnostic features of it do say that you have to have it basically before, adolescence. They now say it's by 12 years old. It used to be by 7 years old, both of which were arbitrary.
Numbers.
Well,
I do think it's important for people with ADHD and people without it, that live with one another, to understand that they are both going to affect one another.
Absolutely. So will you share with us a little bit how is your relationship now with your sister, since you've obviously come a long way from that conversation where she said, oh, it must be because of my ADHD.
Right.
And now you've written a book about it. So
that started me, actually going into remaking my whole career. I used to be in retail. And so when I wasn't in retail, I went back to school for psychology, and then was looking up coaching.
And when you say retail, you were a small business owner.
Yes, I owned my own store. Yeah, I had gone through the ranks. I mean, I was in retail from being a little cashier at the Limited, when I was younger, all the way to then buying offices for like Macy's and Loehmann's, and then having my own store. So, there was no place else to go that would be more satisfying, and the economy was not great. So, I went back to school because I always loved retail therapy. I loved talking to the people in my store.
It's so funny because for me, going shopping makes me need to go into therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, my husband too. But, so I always enjoyed that, and I thought, well, let me look up coaching. I saw this thing about ADHD coaching and went, there's that ADHD thing again. I was like very intrigued, and I liked the science part of the psychology. So it just really tapped into where I felt curious and interested and like I could make a difference for people. And, you know, she just isn't that interested in it. And it's very funny because you would think with her having it that she would be, but she's really not.
Well,
and
it's
so
kind of like
I know more than she does now.
It's kind of like the prior guest that we had, Tom Nardone, who, you know, shared on the show he could care less about the science, which to me, I'm like, really? Like, I think that makes such a difference. But I guess for some people, it's just...
I do get it, though, because I'm adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I meet people, and they, you know, when we find out, oh, you're adopted, they all say, oh, have you found your natural parents? Don't you wonder who they are? And I'm like, yeah, but not real. I mean... It's always sort of this weird conversation because they're like, but wait a minute, wouldn't that be, and they get really excited about it. And I'm like, I'm just not that excited about it. And it's a part of me, but it's just sort of like, because it's a part of me, it's not that, I'm like, not that into it. Some people get very moved by their adoption. They're like, I feel this empty hole I had to go find, or they become adoption advocates. So I can understand. I think it's that same thing. If you're not into it, you're not into it.
That's a really good parallel. I like that. I never really heard that before.
Yeah, I don't think it has to affect you directly. You know, I'm a science geek. I'm interested in the science. So to me, it really worked, you know, and now I know more than she does. And she's like, yeah, okay. She actually is sort of like, you know, I have therapy and I've got medication. I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
So maybe you can give us some of the tips and strategies that you use to kind of help you keep your own sanity with your sister.
You know, and well, that's why I wrote the book. And so,
they always say writing is good therapy.
Yeah, writing is good therapy. Well, I think having a ADHD education is something that we just really need to, put out as a big message that it's just important to have facts because there's so much fiction. So it's, you know, I think that helps the people without ADHD a lot. So when I learned the facts of it and the wiring, and you're talking about subconscious processes, how can you think that the person is willfully doing something that you find annoying? You know,
right, say that again, because that willful part, because I think that is so important for our listeners to understand. And if you have ADHD but your spouse doesn't, this might be a really good moment to say, here, honey, just listen to this one part.
Right. That, you know, learning that ADHD was a lot of subconscious processes going on. That, you know, the actions are not willfully done to annoy you or to do things. It can come off a lot of times like she doesn't care what I think, that she just is into her own thing, and you feel second fiddle a lot, or you feel put off to the side, or here's a good example. She'll call me when she's in the car with the windows down, and you know, it is so annoying. Because I'm like, am I really that much of an afterthought for you that you can't sit down in a quiet space and make time for me? But you know what? I've learned, no. For her, honestly, the movement with the driving, you know, really does get her to be able to focus on our conversation in a much better way. She's not I would be distracted by all that. She's not. The only thing is that we've agreed that she has to roll up the window because the sound quality is horrible.
Right, sure, that makes sense.
You know, so.
Or find some like really high-end microphone that will,
Exactly, get through the wind. I just used to be so offended though. I took it very personally and was like, she won't even, you know, take time to sit down and quietly talk to me, and it was me putting all like what works for me on her, and that doesn't work for her.
So let me ask you this. When you kind of realize, oh, this isn't willful, she's not doing this stuff intentionally, how did that change the nature of your relationship with her?
Well, I think at first I did go through a little period of, I think like mourning, sort of. Because well, and I felt guilty because I didn't know. I didn't know. But none of us knew. I mean, it's not like anybody was hiding things from me. Invisible disabilities are like out in your face. They're right there in front of you and you just don't see them, and you don't know. So I did go through a little period where I felt bad for me, feeling like I was so bad, didn't know.
And I think it's okay. I think it's okay to go through that. My thing is I always encourage my clients to, it's okay to go through that mourning. It's okay to even be angry about that diagnosis, but let's not stay there.
Yeah, no. Then I moved into this sort of like, I did move into, I felt really bad for her. Then I was like, oh my gosh, like that must be so like rough. If everything seems like, if you don't have automatic filtering of stimuli, that blows my mind to this day. I'm like, I think people with ADHD are incredible now. Like, wow. Because I don't know that I could possibly do that. That's great. But I got past that too. Like, then I was like, you know what? We really, you find a common ground. And then I have to see through her eyes. Like really have to have empathy. I think when all the world's problems go away, if we had empathy for one another.
That's the understatement of the day right there.
And I thought I was an empathetic person before, but I learned I was not.
Well, I think in our family relationships, though, it's like we're all kind of just different with our family relationships because we can kind of be at our worst with our own family. So it's like we're not trying to keep it all together. It's like if someone says something in our family we don't like, we may just say what's on our mind about that. Whereas at work, we know that there are serious consequences if we were to do that. Like we'll get fired. We're not going to get fired from our family. We get in arguments that we make up. It's
right. That's
typically what happens.
Right.
So that kind of understanding, I think the importance of really we know through just all of the research on ADHD, from the multimodal study of ADHD, the MTA study, it's a longitudinal study that has been going on for, I think they're in the 29th year, where it's the one thing that we really know that learning about this disorder called ADHD makes a difference. And, what I like what you're talking about is, it's not just, we often talk about, adults with ADHD need to learn about it and parents need to learn about it for their kids. But I really like how you're kind of taking this perspective that I hadn't thought about in the relationship of siblings and other family members and people that are close to you, how it's really important for you as a person involved with somebody else to understand how ADHD is impacting that person. Because I think it's gonna, when you can realize, oh, they're not willfully forgetting to do this thing. They're not willfully ignoring me. They're not willfully being late. It's not because they don't care.
Right. And I saw that with my dad. With my dad, that was being raised by someone with ADHD. That my mother was sort of always behind him, taking care of everything that he was like, would slip through the cracks with him. And so she was always sort of making things happen, I guess. But I remember, I felt some, absence there. It was, not willfully neglect, and he certainly was the fun one out of he was the fun guy.
Isn't that what dads do? I mean, as a dad, it's exactly. I'm the fun one. I'll come home and like my son will come run to me and be all fine, and my wife will give me this look. He wasn't like this before you came home.
It's not fair, is it?
I know. It's my wife has the world's hardest job.
Yeah. Aw. It's, it was really interesting though, I think, looking back. See, and that's the thing is it's this looking back perspective thing that I've gained, that I now appreciate my dad, in ways that I hadn't, but I also, that's the other thing. He killed himself. So there's this whole suicide thing and that's from bipolar. I mean, that's not.
And suicide is so important. We've had other conversations on ADHD Rewired about suicide.
Yes.
And, I just think it's so important to understand what suicide is. And it's one of the most significant symptoms of a mental illness, of depression. Mm-hmm. It is the brain going into kind of the ultimate preservation reserve mode, that it sends signals to your brain that, it needs to conserve so much energy that it needs to stop functioning. And it does that through the form of taking their life.
Yeah.
And it's not a willful thing. It's not easy way out. It's not,
oh no, it's none of those things. And I've had, family members who have survived their attempts. I've also had, including my dad, there's been 3 people in my family that killed themselves. But I've also had a friend, and they both said, the ones that did not, that weren't successful with it, said, all you think of is that, how can I make this pain stop? What can I do to make the pain stop? There's this pain, see, that I don't think that we can even begin to comprehend, because, and people say, oh, it's irrational, he was out of his mind. I think it's even, like you just said, you just put it really beautifully. What'd you say? The brain just
goes into like preservation mode and tries to reserve all its energy, because it's trying to function and it can't.
It's just something that, is very hard to comprehend. And we didn't, that's why I bring it up. I bring it up in the book. I bring it up to anyone who will talk about it, because I think that the stigma around it is what keeps people feeling shame and from getting help, or from talking about, sometimes just even talking might help.
And that's,
certainly not talking doesn't help.
Yeah. It's like, this whole idea of, put a smile on your face and try to pretend that everything looks good. That creates more disability than anything else.
Yes.
And that's a big reason that I do this podcast, is because, it's like we can be very functional, successful, thriving people living with ADHD, and people with other, depression, with anxiety, with other, different wiring can be successful. But the most challenging thing is when we are working so hard in pretending to be normal. It just makes it that much harder, and it exacerbates the challenges that we already have. So, I don't think that everyone should go out and, put a microphone in front of their face and say, I have ADHD, but this is something that I've chosen to do.
Right.
Because I think that if the more stories we hear, the more conversations we have about it, it does take the stigma out of it. So I just think it's a really important piece that you're doing. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I need everyone out there who is, has the courage and realizes the importance of sharing your story, and knowing that there are certainly risks involved in sharing your story. It serves a great service for the rest of the community. But by no means do I think that, just coming out and telling the world that you have ADHD, for many people, that's not recommended. Because most people don't really understand it. So going out in the workplace and saying, "Oh, sorry, I missed that deadline. I have ADHD."
Right.
And
no,
you say,
that's
"Sorry,
not
there's a door."
That's not going to work.
Yeah.
No. But I do think that, my real, it started from developing a relationship with my sister. That was the impetus to get, why I started. And in a career, I took it into a career saying, if I can be with other people and be of any service or help, it taps into my natural, interests and strengths of talking and relating, with people. So I love the ADHD coaching, but the book is really, I'd like to see the stigma, whatever I can do to help contribute to lessen that, because it doesn't help relationships, it didn't help me thinking, my sister was so crazy that I went for almost 20 years with really not having a good relationship with her. It went 2 ways. I'm not saying I shut her out because, she was so crazy, but we didn't connect, and now we do. So clearly you can make a choice to make that happen.
Absolutely. And so that learning as much as you can about it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do really quickly, I'm going to take a quick break just to thank our sponsor and to share one other message, and then we'll be right back.
Boom,
ADHD Rewired for your free download. ADHD Rewired. ADHD Rewired. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free audiobook download. Supercharge your productivity with ADHD Rewired Coaching and Accountability version 2.0. Why 2.0? This is the second time I'll be offering the group, so that makes sense, right? Rewired Coaching 2.0 is an online coaching group experience designed to help you achieve greater results in the areas of life that matter most to you. Learn the essential skills and develop the critical behaviors that will truly help you get your ADHD rewired. Imagine being part of a productivity coaching group tailored towards the needs of the individuals with ADHD, so tailored just for you. With coaching calls up to 5 days a week and having an accountability partner to check in with multiple times a day, it's no wonder why the members of the first ADHD Rewired coaching group have been so productive. These calls are designed to get you from your best intentions to your best actions. If you would like to supercharge your productivity, feel less overwhelmed and more in control of your life and your goals, let me know you're interested in our next coaching group session. It will be here before you know it. Go to erictivers.com/coaching rewired. That's erictivers.com/coaching rewired to let me know you're serious about getting your ADHD rewired. This group will start in January 2015, and just like the last one, this will sell out. That's erictivers.com/coaching rewired. And don't worry, the link will be in the show notes. Okay, we are back with our guest, Jenny Friedman, who's coming out with the book C in ADHD. When is that book coming out?
I want to say by the beginning of the year, new year. So.
Are you self-publishing or are you working with a publisher? Okay.
No, self-publishing.
Okay. And I would definitely encourage you to record, I love audio. So it's,
you had said that. Yeah. So yeah, put it on Audible.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. And if that book is at some point out on Audible, you can get it for free if you haven't done so, got your free copy of anything that's on Audible at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. So we are getting near the end. What else haven't I asked you about that maybe we discussed that we should talk about, and I just haven't asked you out? I'm trying to peek over at my notes here.
Oh, well, you had
I bump
asked
into my
me,
microphone stand and...
It's funny, you had asked me if I had heard of anything on Audible, and I had just downloaded through your link.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get started.
What did you download?
With that. I downloaded The Power of Habit.
Why
we do what we do in life and business. So
is that the one with the yellow cover?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I know a few people that I've talked to in our online community on Facebook that have said that they have listened to that and really liked it.
I'm excited about it because this comes up in my coaching a lot. And in coaching I do, it is about the client finding their own way of making those connections and attachments, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to have a really great suggestion. So I'm hoping to learn even more about habit forming.
And one of the things too that I would recommend for all of our listeners is for me what's really helped me kind of improve my productivity and just the self-management of my own ADHD has so I've read so many books on ADHD and they've all been extraordinarily helpful. But it has really helped me go from, okay, I'm really getting a handle on this to really stepping it up to almost I don't want to say mastery level because I always feel like I can always improve.
Right.
But where I've really stepped it up is when I've stepped outside of the ADHD world a bit in what I'm reading, so that just the personal development stuff, the goal setting, life strategy, those kinds of things. And the thing that's really important, and I think that people with ADHD may have a tendency to hear something that doesn't apply to them, or like for example with the David Allen's Getting Things Done. I like the book. There are certain parts to it that I think for lots of people with ADHD might not apply, because I think there's an undertone of the assumption of an intact working memory. And so, but
so there might be some like modifications or accommodations.
So it's the idea of take what you like from it and get rid of the rest.
Right.
I think with any book, with anyone, that you're going to feel, anyone's going to feel like this is valuable. I don't know if I can use that. And it sounds like, because we have 86,000 flavors of ADHD. And truly, if we do a mathematical kind of combination of all the possibilities.
Is that how many it comes to?
Yeah,
because I know it's like,
a little
I
bit more than that,
actually.
Yeah, so it's, what works for you, what describes you might not describe somebody else, might not work for somebody else. So it's that, learning as much as you can. And tapping into your strengths and interests. It's huge. That's
I think is the message also that needs to really, if you haven't done that yet, that could be probably really key in you managing ADHD is to try to design your life around your strengths and interests.
When I'm working with kids, I have a lot of, empathy for them, because I tell them that, look, it's harder to be a kid with ADHD than it is to be an adult. Because when you're an adult, you can choose more of the stuff you do and don't do. When you're a kid, you got like a 12-year contract that you have to spend 8 hours of the day doing crap you don't like to do.
I know.
And it's like, can you imagine if you or I were given a contract where we say, okay, so you have this job that's going to be like 8 hours a day, and you're actually going to have, somewhere between 6 to 8 different bosses, none of which are going to talk to each other, and you're going to have to, be mobile, so you're not going to have a permanent location, and you're going to have to take work home on a daily basis. How much would you have to actually make to take that job?
I know. That's such a fabulous, I don't know. There's no money. Those poor kids.
So it does get easier the older you get. And so having that, I think that most people have, if they have the luxury to have the job they love, it's a luxury. But people that have different wiring, it's a necessity. And when you have that job that you love, that you thrive in, it's not just, you're going to find your calling. You're going to find the thing that you are truly excellent at. And so I think that's just an important point, is to really focus on what you are good at. And if you're listening and you feel like, oh, well, it's too late now. No, it's not. I don't care how old you are.
It's never too late. I'm 47 and I'm just starting, home.
Wait, I thought you said you were 43.
No, I was 43 when I had that conversation with my sister. That's why I was getting all confused. Like, wait, I was 20 when he died, and then when this happened, I was subtracting the years.
Oh, wow. So you were actually doing math in real time. That's impressive.
It's one of my neurotypical traits. Thank you.
As she, raises her nose very high in the air.
Oh,
I can subtract by 5 in real time.
From real time. Yeah.
So now you are finishing up your ADHD coach training. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm done with that. Right?
Oh, you are done.
No,
so are
I
you
have clients, and so I'm in business.
So if you would say that you have like a specialty within the focus of ADHD, what would you say it is, or have you defined that for yourself?
It's funny because they say that the clients who will be attracted to you will tell you what that is. And it's true. I've already can tell you the commonality seems to be the late diagnosed, people that, are having career changes, very similar to me. So it's like the universe is bringing us together to help one another out.
And that's great. And, it's so interesting too, because I really, really have seen that, what is a good match for a client and coach, or client and therapist has so much to do with that relationship.
It does.
It's
It
not
has
just
everything
about
to do
the
with
clinical
relationship.
training or the coach training. It's how do you connect with this person? And there's a lot of research that shows that if you don't connect with that person, it doesn't matter how good of a therapist they are, how great of technique they use. Yes, all that stuff matters and all that stuff is important, but if you don't connect with the person, it's not going to work. So it's that
and it's people that I've had several people now tell me, and it's just been very flattering, but they say, wow, I've made more progress with you in just a few sessions than I did a year with my psychologist or whoever they were seeing before. So that I think just speaks to the relationship building, like when it's a good fit. It's got to be, because I don't think it's because the person was no good or I'm so supreme. It can't be that, because I just sort of started it. So, but it's definitely, when it's a good mix, it's a fun thing to do if you do coaching. So, do you see a difference between your coaching and your psychology practice?
Yeah. So, for me too, it's very, I'm very clear with my clients that, coaching is coaching and therapy is therapy. As a licensed clinical social worker, I'm very clear with the people that, especially that I'm working with virtually, that, if I sense that, I think that there might be some other issues going on, that I think, seeing a therapist would actually probably be a better fit for you. And I have done that. I've worked, I've had a couple people who I've worked with like 2 sessions with, and after that initial kind of discovery session, and I was just picking up on stuff where I was like, I just think that, let's see if we can get you connected with someone that you can go work with. And then once you kind of get a handle on some of this other stuff, why don't you come and give me a call back? Because it's, I think it's just important.
No, I did that too, just not even a month ago. You can see and I said, that's out of my area of expertise. That's not coaching. Coaching is taking you today in all your glory and just moving forward, and they were definitely going back and needed to, that's, so having that wherewithal, at least knowing, I feel like, I'm doing the right thing by them. And in the future, hopefully they'll come back. It'd be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't know. I had a girl I was talking to, said, oh, I'm going to work with someone else. And 3 months later, she came back to me and said, you know what? I think I want to work with you after all. So, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, okay. So we are running out of time here.
Okay.
So I want to just quickly ask you, do you have any final words, any kind of last, pieces of wisdom that you can share with the siblings? Really focus on talking to the siblings to help that understanding of.
I think the most important thing I discovered was that you can be from the same parents, in the same environment, in the same dinner table, and you're having 2 different realities. Because especially if one of them is wired differently than how you're wired, which we really technically all are wired differently, but especially if you have someone with ADHD and someone without, the experience, the perceptions in real time are different. And so when you can know that and embrace that, I think a lot of the judgments that you make as someone neurotypical, you let that go. That's how you let that go. Because how can I judge when everything you're doing based on your perceptions is 100% normal? I would be doing the same thing.
Yeah. So understanding different perceptions, and also knowing that the stuff that, even though if it's feeling hurtful at that moment, it's not intentional and it's not about you.
It's not about you. It's about how they're perceiving, everything around them, and subconsciously, not even consciously. It's subconsciously. So, really that just did it for me. That was like, oh, done. I'm in, I can now.
That's a really important message for everyone to really hear and to really know. And it doesn't mean it's easy, but it's, learning and knowing about this stuff makes a difference. Mm-hmm. So, Jenny Freeman, thank you for, sharing some time with me on ADHD Rewired. If people want to find you, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
To go to jennyfreeman.com, puts you through to my email, and it's got some information there. Also, ADHDand.com is my website. So.
Okay, and we will have, of course, links to that in the show notes that you could find at erictivers.com/38. I believe this is episode 38. And, or just go to ADHDrewired.com and click on that podcast tab and you can see all the episodes, there. Yeah, right? 38.
I remember when you were doing one. And I was like, hey, that's great for you.
I know. I see, I'm going to hit 50. I'm going to, I feel like I'm getting this to be a kind of a well-oiled machine. This has really been the when I get to record these interviews, I look forward to this so much. This is one of my favorite parts of the week.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And, of course, Jenny is in the ADHD Rewired Facebook community, so come talk with her there. Yeah. And thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Thank you. Well, ADHD Rewired community, as always, I want to thank you for listening and for leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews. If you've been listening for a while and been thinking about leaving a review, go ahead and do it now. I'll wait. How painful was that pause? Do you have a question, comment, or story to share about your ADHD? Oh, wait. What's that? You do? Hang on. This just in.
Hello, Oz Du Soleil here, and I just finished listening to the full episode with Helene Boucher. That was great. There's a lot of things made sense to me, and I left a comment. But, yeah, I would love to be a guest on your show and talk about so many interesting things that have gone on.
Oz, thank you for your message, and check your email, because I sent you one. If you want to hear your question or comment on an upcoming episode, go to my website, erictivers.com/ADHD Rewired, and you can leave your comment, record your question, or request to be a guest. Are you looking for a coach? You can schedule a free 20-minute consult with me. It's super easy. Go to erictivers.com and click the blue Request an Appointment bar. We are on Facebook. Like our page and submit your request to join our free community. It does take about a week for me to reply, and don't forget to check your other inbox because I'll have a few questions before I accept you into the group. If you live in the Northern Illinois area, I'd like to remind you that the chapter of CHAD of Northern Illinois, we meet every Monday, the third Monday of the month in Grays Lake. We are on Facebook and on meetup.com. Just check the show notes for a link. A quick check-in regarding my sleep goals. It's been a hard week, and I had to be very, very intentional regarding the CHAD conference coming up, but I did meet my goal of getting home 2 times last week, and I've already achieved that this week. With the CHAD conference this week, I just have to stay focused on making sure I get to bed at the conference on time. Now, I do have to go pack for the conference and get this recording to my amazing team, DJ and Richard. If it weren't for you guys, I'd probably be here past midnight. So, thank you. To the members of the ADHD Rewired online coaching group, I would like to insert some inspiring motivational message here, but I really have to run. So I'll talk to you all on today's coaching call, which is really Monday, but I'm recording this on Wednesday, which means through the power of podcasting, I have traveled through space and time, which means I need to stop talking. So don't forget, if you would like to be a part of the next ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability group, let me know by going to erictivers.com/coaching rewired. All the links will be in the podcast app in the show notes, and get the full show notes at my website. For this episode, the link will be erictivers.com/38. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening. Until next time.